God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back. It works if you work it, and you're worth it. Hello everyone, welcome to my brand new video. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Mia and I am very grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that people are watching my content because my content is always changing. I'm always changing the topics, whether it's language learning, whether it's an artsy project that I recently did, whether it's about me traveling to a different country. I'm always choosing a new topic because I like to keep things interesting and different, and I always have so many different topics on my mind that I want to share. So that being said, today's topic is Codependents Anonymous, aka it's also called CODA, C-O-D-A, CODA for short, which also reminds me of that movie that came out a couple of years ago that was definitely Oscar worthy. It was literally called CODA, but it was about this lovely, talented gal who was living with deaf parents. So I believe the acronym for CODA is also an acronym for those who struggle with hearing loss as well. But anyway, that's just a fun fact aside. I am just so grateful for the 12 steps that I've been working religiously for the last 2 months. I haven't missed a single meeting for the last 2 months. I've been really devoted to this inner work, to this practice of admitting where I'm wrong, this practice of just being radically, rigorously honest with myself and honest with others, and like just being authentic. Like, it's been such deep, beautiful inner work, and I was compelled and inspired to create this video. So I want to get right into what the 12 steps are, and then I'll speak a little bit more about my personal experience about this in-person CODA meeting, which has been life-changing. I found a really great group of people in the suburbs of Chicago, and it's all women. Like, we come together every single Wednesday at 10 a.m. It's all of us women. We cry, we admit where our relationships are failing, we admit our faults in these relationships, and it's so healing and just beautiful that we're able to come together and share like that. So okay, let's get into what the 12 steps are. I did write them down. Step number one, we admitted we are powerless over others, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step number two, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step number three, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all people we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God, praying only for the knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. Step number 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to other codependents and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Whew. Amen. Now, it's a lot of work right there. It's a lot of steps. Technically, I completed these steps. It was about 2 or 3 years ago that I started my CODA journey, my Codependents Anonymous journey. It was like, I read this one book, you might have heard of it. It's by Melody Beattie, and it's called Codependent No More. I'll try to put that in the description below. Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. I opened up that book at a meditation retreat center, and I was reading through all the characteristics of a codependent, and I was like, oh my God, this is me. I kind of already knew that that was me, hence why I was drawn to that book and to buying that book. I kind of already knew, but when I started going through the depth of that book and all of the stories and the characteristics, I was like, holy hell, this is me, this is me, this is me. Now, basically the definition of being a codependent, it's a very broad definition. Honestly, I can't single it down to a single sentence, but I could say from my own personal experience, when I'm being codependent, I am giving my power away to that other person. I'm either ruminating a lot, going over and over and over, overthinking in my head about maybe what I said or what I could do better, or I'm trying to control the situation, or I'm struggling in that relationship. It's not so much when people think of being codependent, people automatically think, oh, that person's codependent. That means they're joined at the hip with like a partner or a lover or another person. They're joined at the hip and they have literally no autonomy. They're codependent. They're financially dependent on this person. No, codependency does not necessarily mean you're joined at the hip with someone else. Codependency can just be relationship problems in general. Like, because of my codependency, I tend to people please a lot. I people please by putting their needs before my own, because actually I'm trying to protect myself from the shame and the guilt that I will feel if and when I let that person down. So actually, it's not really about pleasing that other person, people pleasing that person. It's actually really selfishly about myself, and just the fact that maybe I felt a lot of shame, a lot of guilt when I was a little girl, and I knew how triggering that was and how horrible that was. So then now in my adulthood, it's like I never want to feel shame and guilt again. I want to just please everyone. I want to make everyone else happy. But then as a struggling codependent, you feel burnt out. You feel like, well, I'm not fucking happy. Like, I didn't give anything back to myself. I feel burnt out. I feel depleted. I feel bitter. I feel angry, yada, yada, yada. AKA you have problems because you have problems in your relationships, in which I wrote down, you know what, basically codependency recovery in a nutshell is working on having healthier relationships. So you don't have to identify as a codependent to benefit from these coda meetings, not meaning to preach or, solicit or to proselytize for the coda meetings. I'm not saying that everyone should go. You don't have to go, but I'm just saying, if you are curious, if you're watching this video and you're like, you know what, I did just recently go through a breakup, or you know what, I have been having problems at work. Again, I'll say it again. You don't have to identify as a codependent. You don't have to identify with all the characteristics of a codependent. If you just simply want, crave, or desire healthier relationships in your life, and it's like, well, who doesn't, then you can really benefit like a program like this, or even just reading a coda book, a codependency recovery book like I did. And when I read that book, it was about 4 years ago at a meditation retreat. I was like, okay, I want to get into this work. I want to know more about codependency. I want to join a support group. I want to join CODA, the 12-step meeting. And I want to educate myself. I want to learn more, because there's nothing more that I desire, nothing more that I want than to have beautiful, smooth relationships at work. I want to have healthy and awesome relationships with my friendships. I want to have great, loving relationships, or relationship with my future partner. Maybe a future husband would be nice, but I really, really just desire beautiful, healthy relationships in my life. But most importantly, that does start with the healthy and loving relationship with yourself. You have to forgive yourself, you have to work on yourself, and you have to be rigorously honest with yourself. And fun fact, I actually have the words rigorous honesty. You could probably see through my sheer shirt. But yeah, it says rigorous honesty on my arm. I got that tattooed a couple years ago because I do identify as a woman in recovery. And honestly, the last puzzle piece to the big puzzle that I call Mia's addictive mind, the last puzzle piece is this codependency piece. To be rigorously, radically honest, I have struggled with drug addiction. This was in my teenage years. I struggled with alcoholism. This was in my early 20s. And I struggled here and there with some sex addiction tendencies as well. And I am so grateful. I feel so free. I feel so liberated to say right here, right now, I am not currently struggling from any addictions. Like, I am addiction free right now because I have consciously sought out the help that I needed. I fought for my mental health again and again and again. I joined recovery groups. I reached out to therapists. I did my meditation sessions. I'm like, no, I don't want to ever struggle with drugs, alcoholism, escapism, spending too much money, avoiding my pain. I'm like, no, I want to be the spiritual warrior. I want to face all my pain. I want to heal. I wanted to heal more than anything. So I started putting in the good work. But again, I'll admit, it's not like all of my relationships are perfect, to be completely honest. It's still hard for me to go into a work environment and get along with everyone. It's like, no, things come up in my work environments, and I humbly admit that again, I'm not perfect. I'm still working on relationships. So like I said, I feel like this is the last little puzzle piece of something that I really need to work on and heal in terms of the big puzzle that is my life and my addictions in general. But again, I'll say it again, very grateful to be addiction free right now, and very humbled, very grateful for this recovery journey. And I'll say right now, I'm choosing to recover out loud. I'm choosing to be vulnerable and honest in this video. I didn't have to just say what I just said. I mean, that's very vulnerable to admit that I struggled with drug addiction in my teenage years. That's it's a vulnerable part of me that I have to admit. That did happen in my life, but I'm choosing to recover out loud because I know in doing so, I instantly am of service to others. I instantly help others and free others to allow them to look at parts of themselves, where they're like, wow, I struggled with alcoholism too. Or, man, I was really addicted to marijuana at one point. Or, man, yeah, I totally hit a bankruptcy by the age of 35 because I literally didn't know how to manage my life and I didn't know how to manage finances. Whatever it might be, me sharing my truth, me being rigorously, radically honest with the fact that I'm not perfect and I've struggled with my mental health in my life and I've struggled with addiction in my life, that in and of itself instantly helps others. And I've had people at these meetings, at these CODA meetings that I've been religiously attending for the last 2 months, I have them walk up to me and give me hugs after my shares. Like, I'll just be sitting there and I'll be like, yeah, I'm struggling with this and I felt really vulnerable with this and recovery is hard for me because of this or whatever. And I'll have women who I never met before, they'll walk up to me and they'll be like, you know what, your share really helped me today. It really touched me today. Can I give you a hug? And I'll be like, yes. So it's just like, it's so amazing how, I'll say it again, if you choose to recover out loud, you thereby choose to help others, to be of service to others. Because I understand, once again, I'll say it, I understand it's called anonymous. You're supposedly not supposed to, well, definitely don't share the names of other people who are going, you're not supposed to share their stuff or their stories, but there is this whole idea that it's anonymous. You're not supposed to like openly admit that you're in the program when you're at work, or not openly admit, on YouTube that you're in a program or whatever. You know what? My own philosophy is that, once again, if you recover out loud and you're honest and you're like, hey, I am in this program, then more people start coming out of the woodworks and more people start admitting to what they're struggling with as well. So I personally wish the whole anonymous piece was like left out of the program, but I digress. I can't control everything. I'm not going to try to control everything, because that is unfortunately a quality and a characteristic of struggling codependents, is codependents have control issues. Codependents are people pleasers. Codependents put other needs before themselves. Codependents will often self-sabotage. Codependents will subconsciously, even if they're not conscious of it, they'll manipulate. So there's a lot of stuff. I'm not going to get into all the qualities and characteristics, because if you're really interested, you can go to a CODA meeting yourself, or you can pick up a codependency recovery book. I actually just want to kind of go through the steps for myself and share with you how the steps have been for me. So, and I'll take a breath because I just shared a lot with you. I know it can be a lot. My journey has been so beautiful and so crazy and so up and down in so many ways. So I think we need to take a pause. We need to take a breath. I just burped. Okay. So now going into the steps. Step number 1, we admitted we were powerless over others, that our lives had become unmanageable. This, to me, is the most powerful step. This is what will inspire you to walk the other steps. This is what brought me to the Coda path again about 3 or 4 years ago. When I read that book, I was like, oh my God, everything she's describing, that's me, it's me, you know? So you have to admit to yourself, like, wow, when I read the definition of an alcoholic, that's me. Or wow, when I read the definition of a codependent, that's me. Or wow, when I read the definition of a narcissist, that's me. Whatever it might be. In order to really get the help you need, you have to first admit to yourself that you have the problem. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who are stuck in their addictions, or who are stuck in their whatever disorders or diseases or whatever, and they will not admit. They will not admit they're the narcissist. They will not admit that they're the alcoholic. They will not admit that they're the codependent. They will not admit to any of that stuff. So it's so refreshing, and it's so beautiful when you meet an individual who's at the very least, at least walked the first step by admitting, like, hey, my life has become unmanageable. I have this problem. And when I think of we were powerless over others and our lives have become unmanageable, I think of how I become powerless over others when I'm obsessing or overthinking about a certain situation with another person that I cannot control. I cannot control my boss. I cannot control the fact that she micromanages me. I cannot control the fact that she's controlling and she's annoying and I don't want to be around her, or whatever it might be, because I did have 2 bosses like that last year, and I literally could not control these bosses. They were how they were. You can't control other people, and yet I was powerless over them because I would go home at night and I would still be thinking about my bosses. It's not like I had peace in my heart and in my soul about the situation. My life had become unmanageable because I lost my sense of peace because of these managers that I was working with, or maybe some friendships that I was involved in. You lose your peace when you overthink, or you try to control, or you're not able to speak your truth out loud and make the situation better. That's when you start to lose your peace, and that's when your life, in my eyes, your life becomes unmanageable when you lose your sense of inner peace, and that's no bueno. You want that inner peace. You want that sanity, right? So step number 2 is about that sanity. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So I call this power greater than myself my higher power. I also call that power God. That is why I wear the cross, because I believe in God. Okay, step number 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. So a little reminder for step number 3, it's how you understand God. You don't have to believe in an ominous male being in the sky who's judging your every move. No, your idea, how you understand God, could just simply be consciousness. It could be simply a higher state of consciousness. It could be love. To you, God could be love. It could be an abstract thing. It doesn't have to be this male figure in the sky who's like looking down at you, like judging you at, again, every move that you make. It is how you understand God to be, which I truly hope that everyone could understand their own higher power and come to meet their higher power, because it's a beautiful thing. Step number 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So this goes back to what I said earlier, basically having rigorous honesty every single day with yourself. Like, man, I messed up when I said that, or man, I messed up when I numbed out and I avoided that. You know, you have to have this searching and fearless moral inventory of yourself in order to really do well on this path. Step number 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So again, this goes back to humility, admitting where you falter. Make that phone call, admit that you messed up, have that conversation that's so uncomfortable to have. You have to admit where you were wrong. Step number 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So number 6 brings up this concept of surrender, reminding yourself like, hey, I cannot do this alone. Higher power, God, source, consciousness, love, whatever you want to call it, get down on your knees and really just ask for that help. Please, I cannot remove all these defects of character by myself. I cannot become the person that you want me to be in order to be of service to others. I cannot do this alone. So number 6, just remind